The South China Sea is a ticking time bomb. China's aggressive expansion, U.S. alliances, and razor-thin red lines have turned this vital trade corridor into the world's most dangerous flashpoint. One wrong move, a clash over a disputed reef, a misread radar signal could unleash a full-scale war involving nuclear-armed superpowers. It begins with a supply mission that doesn't go as planned. At dawn, the BRP Teresa Magbanua departs Palawan carrying construction materials and provisions to the Philippine Marines stationed aboard the BRP Sierra Madre, a grounded World War, the Second-era ship used as a forward outpost in the Spratly Islands. Though protected by a July 2024 agreement between Manila and Beijing, tensions escalate when 3 Chinese Coast Guard vessels begin shadowing the Philippine vessel. As the Teresa Magbanua nears the Sierra Madre, Chinese ship CCG 5901 blocks its path, coming dangerously close. Despite threats of water cannon use, the Philippine ship presses forward. The 2 vessels narrowly avoid collision until heavy seas cause the reinforced bow of the Chinese ship to ram into the Teresa Magbanua, breaching the hull and killing 4 Filipino sailors. Distress signals are sent immediately. Philippine reinforcements are announced, forcing the Chinese vessels to withdraw. This becomes the first combat-related fatality in the South China Sea since the 1988 Johnson South Reef skirmish. In Manila, the Philippine president convenes a National Security Council. With 4 sailors dead, the government considers this nearly an act of war. The U.S. responds quickly. Defense Secretary confirms that Article the 4th of the U.S. Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty applies. The USS Carl Vinson carrier strike group redirects toward Philippine waters. Japan and Australia heighten their military readiness. Japanese destroyers and Australian ships near Palawan prepare to assist. China responds by sending 2 destroyers from Hainan. Beijing blames the incident on illegal Philippine activity, while President Xi convenes an emergency military session. Later, U.S. Navy destroyers deploy from Subic Bay, and American F-35B fighters conduct patrols near the incident site. By nightfall, the UN Security Council holds an emergency session. Markets react immediately, shipping rates spike, goods prices rise, and over $340 billion in annual trade through the South China Sea is at risk. By early day, 2 Chinese military aircraft, including J-11 fighters and H-6K bombers, capable of launching anti-ship missiles, deploy to artificial islands like Fiery Cross Reef. Radar systems and surface-to-air missile batteries are activated at Mischief Reef. The USS Carl Vinson Group patrols near Scarborough Shoal, while Japanese forces invoke collective defense measures. Vietnamese naval assets deploy, citing threats to their exclusive economic zone. Fighters, frigates, submarines, and air defense systems are put on high alert, expanding the conflict's threat range. Chinese electronic warfare capabilities disrupt communications between U.S. carrier-based aircraft and their fleet. Australia commits to supporting its allies under the ANZUS Treaty. One of its submarines is dispatched into the region. That afternoon, a second Chinese Coast Guard vessel blocks Philippine rescue boats. A U.S. Navy destroyer intervenes, leading to a 4-hour standoff. Meanwhile, Chinese jets patrol dangerously close to American aircraft. Markets plunge, crude oil prices rise, and investor confidence plummets. Day 3 brings the first signs of broader escalation. A U.S. attack submarine begins tracking Chinese formations, while a Chinese submarine shadows the American carrier. Tensions rise as China readies DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles. The U.S. withdraws its carriers to a safer distance. Unexpectedly, North Korea test fires ballistic missiles toward Japan. South Korea raises its military alert status, suspecting coordination with China. The PLA starts exercises near Taiwan, repositioning vessels closer to the island, Taiwan scrambles fighters and readies missile defenses. Britain and France commit their carrier strike groups. NATO begins serious consultations. European involvement expands the coalition, with global consequences. China's maritime militia then rams Philippine supply boats. Philippine fighters are dispatched and exchange warning shots with Chinese interceptors. India, concerned about the Malacca Strait, deploys its navy near Singapore. The war now spans both the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Chinese cyberattacks disable Philippine internet infrastructure. Hypersonic missiles and bombers are put on alert. These weapons, capable of reaching Mach 10, are nearly impossible to counter. Chinese fighters lock onto a Japanese destroyer. Japan responds with electronic defenses. U.S. fighters force a Chinese retreat before missiles are launched. That evening, DEFCON 2 is declared as Chinese nuclear activity intensifies. Strategic forces in both the U.S. and China prepare for the worst. Late that night, a Chinese destroyer fires warning shots at a Vietnamese frigate. Vietnam responds with radar locks and missile activation. Both sides exchange fire, but miss intentionally. The cost so far: 4 dead, dozens injured, and trillions lost in market value. Day 4 begins with a major shift. China launches its long-planned invasion of Taiwan. Hundreds of ships and aircraft descend upon the island. Taiwanese missile defenses strike incoming ships, but the numbers are overwhelming. Air battles ensue as Chinese J-20 fighters secure temporary air superiority. Taiwan activates defensive measures, port shutdowns, and sea mines. U.S. forces must decide between defending Taiwan or remaining in the Philippines. The strike group begins shifting toward Taiwan, and the U.S. effectively declares war. Chinese missiles bombard U.S. bases in Japan. Japan activates offensive operations. Nuclear submarines appear in the Philippine Sea, prompting DEFCON 1. Russia increases its nuclear alert level in response. NATO condemns the Chinese strikes, but does not yet invoke Article 5. India's frigate NS Trikand is sunk by a Chinese submarine, killing 325 sailors. India declares war on China, fracturing the BRICS alliance. Global shipping collapses. Oil prices skyrocket. Major stock markets halt trading due to panic selling. Russia announces support for China, sending bombers near Alaska and encircling Japanese waters. Australia commits most of its operational military. North Korea joins the conflict, launching missiles at Japan and South Korea. Seoul considers preemptive strikes. By day 5, Taiwan's semiconductor exports stop. Major tech companies suspend operations. The G7 meets in emergency session. China pressures Brunei, Indonesia, and Belt and Road Initiative partners. Pakistan considers hosting a Chinese submarine base. On day 6, Allied forces launch Tomahawk missile strikes on Chinese artificial islands. British submarines sink Chinese vessels. China's aircraft carrier operates in the Indian Ocean. India launches supersonic missiles from its Andaman bases. China strikes U.S. GPS satellites. The U.S. disables the Chinese Beidou system in response. Cyber warfare escalates, targeting power grids, factories, and internet infrastructure. China cuts seabed cables. The world's nuclear forces are now on high alert. In week 2, China attacks Guam, destroying bombers and killing airmen. Cyberattacks cripple weapon guidance systems. Limited U.S. strikes hit missile production sites in Hubei. China responds with long-range weapons targeting the Mediterranean, severing NATO access to the Suez Canal. A Chinese strike on a British base in Cyprus finally triggers NATO's Article 5. NATO declares war on China. Russia militarizes its border with NATO countries. Iran attacks Saudi oil fields. Israel strikes Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran threatens nuclear retaliation. Shipping in the Persian Gulf stops. Africa and South America are dragged into the chaos. Brazil supports the US and is threatened by China. African mines vital to the tech industry are sabotaged, killing workers and crippling supply lines. By week 3, the war spans 6,000 miles of ocean. Thousands are dead. Entire manufacturing networks collapse. Precision strikes evolve into attritional warfare, with exponentially rising casualties. The conflict mirrors Ukraine's war trajectory, but on a global scale. By week 4, two paths emerge: a coalition victory or global nuclear war. If Russia launches nuclear weapons, retaliation from the US, Britain, France, Israel, Pakistan, and Iran would follow. Over 5 billion people could die, and a nuclear winter could last a decade, causing global famine. If peace prevails, it will come with immense loss. China might be forced into negotiations from a position of weakness. Regardless of the outcome, the world will never be the same. The fog of war makes accurate forecasting impossible beyond the initial escalation. But one thing is clear: if a war in the South China Sea begins, it may become the deadliest and most widespread conflict humanity has ever witnessed. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any updates. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.